In the book of Numbers, we're getting close to the end, but I thought that we would take this opportunity to take a look at one of the most famous passages in the book of Numbers, and that is the so-called priestly blessing, the priestly benediction. And what I'd like to do, since one of the key words in this blessing, and you know it well, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, the first word is a form of the word that means blessing, Baruch, Yivarechecha. Hebrew has a special capacity to combine prefixes and suffixes and conjunctions to the key word. And let him bless is all in Hebrew, one word. So what I want to do is to look at a couple of ways in which this blessing, the priestly blessing, is explored actually in the Bible itself and beyond, as I'm going to point out to you. So we have here at the top of the page that you have, and I've circled it near the top, the Shema and its blessings, which we just uttered. The opening of that rubric, that section, is the Baruch, which is a call to worship. Baruch in the plural imperative. Now, sometimes we will say that so-and-so is going to bless the Torah. In fact, we, according to our tradition, do not utter blessings. We call on God to bless us, so that when God is the subject of blessing, then we translate it blessing. When we are the subject and are directed to God, the word for blessing in Hebrew, Baruch, is rendered praise. So you can see right here at the top, I've circled to the right the Hebrew word Baruch, and across the page, transliterated, and right below it on the right, Baruch and the transliteration. Praise God, to whom all praise is due. Praised be God by us, to whom praise is due now and forever. So it is God who is the source of blessings, and we can call upon God to bless us. But what I might call the ideology of Judaism places God at the center of all being and the source of everything wonderful that happens to us, including our capacities to do wonderful things to and for each other. We thank God for those capacities which we are called upon to bring to actualization. So when we look at the priestly blessing at the middle of that page, I just want to point out to you, you can see that it's Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 to 27. This blessing is already found as an inscription in a hill in Jerusalem that is dated back to the 8th century before the Common Era. That means that this blessing was inscribed on the parchment or stone, I don't know which. At the time of the prophet Isaiah, the prophet Amos, Hosea, and Micah, all 8th century prophets. So already before the Bible was put together, this blessing in one of its forms was already articulated. We find it as well in the Dead Sea Scrolls. As you may know, the Dead Sea Scrolls were placed in caves in Qumran, just south of Jericho, before they were captured and destroyed by the Romans in 70 of the Common Era. And these scrolls in these caves remained undiscovered for 2,000 years until they were uncovered by a shepherd boy which then eventuated in their translation. This scroll that has a fragment of the priestly blessing is named 1Q5, 1QSB, 1 Cave 1, Q Qumran, because these scrolls were found up and down the Dead Sea area, as well as Masada. S for the main word for prayer here, a rule, the second version of it, 1QSB. So the way in which these are inscribed is important. So this shows us that the priestly blessing, which we read in the book of Numbers chapter 6, already by the time it was inscribed in the scroll, had a long history. It was famous before it became a central part of not only the book of Numbers, but of Jewish worship. We say the priestly blessing at all simchas. What I want to point out as well is that the last of the biblical prophets, Malachi, turns this blessing upside down. You can see that it says, "The Lord bless you and protect you. The Lord deal kindly and graciously with you." And what Malachi does at a period of darkness in ancient Israel, will the Lord bless you? Will the Lord deal kindly with you? Will all of these rhetorical questions, which when framed positive, insist upon a negative response. Will the Lord bless you? I don't think so. Will the Lord make his countenance to shine upon you? This is Malachi. Times are so bad now that what we could count on in the past is turned upside down now. So you can see that this priestly blessing has a prehistory, that it is found later on in a cave in Qumran, and it was deployed by other authors of the Bible itself, so that a powerful blessing, a powerful prayer, has a history before and after. Let's take a little look at it together. You can see that what I've done here with the priestly blessing is I have circled, the first Hebrew circle is Tivarachu, which is translated, shall you bless. I'm circling Hebrew and English. And then in verse 24, Yivarechecha, which is translated, may the Lord bless you. And you can see the last word. You see that I've bracketed on the Hebrew side verses 24, 25, and 26. That's the priestly blessing itself with a prefix and then a suffix, so to speak. The first word is Yivarechecha, may the Lord bless. The last word in verse 26, Shalom, peace. So that if we were to create a kind of envelope, the contents being contained by the first and the last word, the priestly blessing goes from, may the Lord bless you, to the chief blessing, Shalom, peace. If you look at the last passage from Psalm 29, this is not Numbers anymore, this is from the book of Psalms. The last verse reads, may the Lord grant strength to his people, may the Lord bestow, the Hebrew word is bless, his people with well-being. The Hebrew word is shalom. I'm going to read it in Hebrew and emphasize those two words. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo vashalom. You notice that the two key words in the last line of Psalm 29 represent the first and the last words of the priestly blessing. As a kind of distillation of the larger contents of the priestly blessing. So you can see that these verses are not only powerful in themselves, but they ripple and resonate through prehistory and subsequent history. They're quoted in whole or in part throughout the Bible. Let's just, for a couple of minutes, look at the blessing itself. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Speak to Aaron and his sons." It's called the priestly blessing because the priests, the Kohanim, are the ones who invoke this blessing. "Speak to Aaron and his sons, thus shall you bless the people of Israel." In Hebrew, "Ko tavarachu," shall you, the priest, bless the people. Do you see that this contradicts what I just said? That individuals are called upon to do the blessing. What are we going to do about this? We can do one of two things. We can try to harmonize the two things. We can say when the Torah here says, "You shall bless," what it really means is, you shall be the vehicle for God's doing the blessing. This is what we call the effort to harmonize contradictory texts. And we do so because we would like our basic text to be consistent. The other option is not to force ourselves to harmonize, but to reckon with the contradictory texts themselves, and then wonder why texts are contradictory. If Homer were to contradict himself, we would say famously, at this point, Homer nodded off. But we don't want we don't want to force our texts into consistency. One possibility is these two words, these two meanings, come from two different traditions, and the editor did not work hard to harmonize them. Okay? So we have an interesting phenomenon here of an ancient text and don't know exactly how to reconcile it, even if we wanted to. The great poet and dramatist of the German Enlightenment, Goethe, said, "Do I contradict," maybe that was, let's say it was Goethe. Do I contradict myself? Yes, I contradict myself as a feature of our human nature. Let's look at it. "Thus you shall bless the people of Israel. Say to them, the Lord bless you and protect you. The Lord deal kindly and graciously with you. The Lord bestow his favor upon you and grant you peace." There's a kind of crescendo at work here. The first line has 3 words. The second line has 5 words. The third line has 7 words. 7, 5, and 3 equal 15. One of the names of God, Yud, He. Every Hebrew letter has a numerical equivalent. Yud is 10, He is 5, 15. The number of words equals the name of God. And poetry does this sort of thing from time to time. If we look at consonants, the first line has 15 consonants, the second 20, and the third 25. So there is a kind of scheme here, what we might call a poetic scheme, that gives this poem a kind of rhythm and an increasing intensity until it gets to the climactic word, peace. We might ask ourselves, how many actions are there represented here? May the Lord bless you and keep you. 2. May the Lord deal kindly with you and be gracious to you. 2 more. May the Lord bestow his favor upon you and grant you peace. 2 more. 6 actions, although we might reduce them to 3. May the Lord bless you by protecting you. May the Lord bestow his favor upon you. May the Lord deal kindly by being gracious to you. May the Lord bestow his favor upon you by granting you peace. Words of intent, of action, and words of consequence. We get in this the protection, the graciousness, and peace. Three fundamental concepts in the Jewish tradition and captured by this prayer. At this point, I think I'm going to stop and just see, because I'm thinking of this as something of a study session, and we should have more than one voice in a study session. Any comments, questions in the couple of minutes we have left? Everything is so clear, so uncontroversial. Yes, Beth. Okay, Beth is asking the question about a comment that I made earlier about the second paragraph of the Shema. All right, I'm going to say something about it. I'm going to try now to get you home by midnight. So, the first paragraph talks about loving God for its own sake. There's no indication of consequences for loving God or for not loving God. With all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. So that I might say this is Judaism's ideal. Keeping God and God's goodness to us central in our thinking, and not because we're about to or hope to get a reward. There's a purity in the first paragraph of the Shema to love God intensely when you lie down and when you rise up, when you're at home and when you are away. If I say the people come from far and near, I don't mean they come just from far or just from near. I mean they come from everywhere. When you lie down and when you rise up, not just at the moment you lie down, not just in the moment, all day. When you are at home and when you are away, everywhere. So this is the intrinsic value of fidelity. Now, this is a very high bar. Most of us act in order to get a reward or to avoid a consequence. The second paragraph of the Shema introduces reward and punishment. Keep the commandments so you will get rain in its season, the early rain and the latter rain. And it emphasizes not just love, but fear. Love is doing something for its own sake. Fearing God is for the sake of avoiding a negative consequence. So while the first paragraph of the Shema is pure, the second, in a way, lowers the standard and acknowledges the realities of human nature. The third paragraph of the Shema, with its seat and so on, deals with ritual. What the Reform movement did was to eliminate the second paragraph because they thought that it lowered the bar, that we really should strive for the ideal and not do the right thing only for getting a reward and avoiding the negative. And it eliminated the seat part of the third paragraph from Numbers 15, but did reintroduce that last paragraph that I pointed out. Now, I ask myself, was this a mistake on the part of Reform Judaism? And I believe it was. If you think about the paragraphs 1, 2, 3, this is the order from perfection to the need for reward and punishment thinking and the need for the ritualization of the commandments. If you think of the 3 paragraphs in pedagogical terms, one should read them 3, 2, 1. Start with ritual, get into the habit of the ritual, allow the ritual to stimulate your thinking. I am doing these rituals, the tzitzit, which embody the 613 commandments. I may begin to think about them. My next step may be to begin to do the commandments. Why should I do them? I have two choices: for reward and punishment, or for their own sake. Human nature suggests that first I'm going to look for some consequences. The rabbis say one should begin to do a commandment not for its own sake, in order in time to come to see the point of the commandments and do them for its own sake. In other words, paragraph 2 makes concessions to human nature. After all, in our geometry or calculus classes, the teacher used the blackboard. In talking about the features of a circle, the teacher drew a circle on the board. That is not a circle. That's just a shadow of a circle. The perfect circle cannot be drawn. So that we need props, we need pictures, we need inducements, so that I will begin to do the commandments for my own self-centered reasons, hoping that one day I'll come to see the point of this and do them for their own sake. Ritual, commandments instrumentally, commandments for their own sake. So that we move 1, 2, 3 from perfection to human need to ritual, but pedagogically, ritual to human need to perfection. And this is why there is a subtle, really quite profound order to the 3 paragraphs of the Shema. The Reform movement, being a kind of messianic movement, by a messianic movement we mean solving the millennial problems of humanity. The Reform movement is a product of the Enlightenment. Light, bringing light to culture out of those miserable, dark ages. And so the Reform movement was part of the idealism of the Enlightenment, that we really can solve the problems through reason, science, and tolerance that has beleaguered human beings forever. Well, an idealistic movement like Reform Judaism at its beginning was not going to make concessions to human weakness. It was going to go for perfection and skip some steps. And in my view, those steps need to be taken as an acknowledgement of reality, as a vehicle for trying to see what is right for its own sake. That's a quick answer to your question. Okay, Shabbat Shalom.